Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 3, Episode 16, Death Takes a Halliwell. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happened within this episode. So we start the episode with Prue and Phoebe on the beach because they're giving Piper and Leo some alone time at home. Prue is taking pictures of the ocean while Phoebe builds a sand castle. And then as they walk along the beach, they talk about how it's the same beach Grams took them to when Patty died to cheer them up, which Phoebe was too young to remember, but for Prue, it isn't necessarily a happy place. She then glances up and notices a woman taking pictures of them and sees a dark shadow behind the woman, who, once she realizes she's been noticed, runs away. We then see two new demons known as the Seekers visiting Cole's former apartment, where they meet the landlady, Mrs. Owens, and gather information from her, which results in her dying as they try to hunt for Cole. Piper and Leo then leave for their wedding reception up where the elders are, and Prue and Phoebe are planning to work on the shadow that Prue had seen. This is when Rhys Davidson, who had been investigating Cole before and interviewing Phoebe, knocks on the door or rings the bell and basically informs Phoebe that Cole's former landlady had been murdered and that he knows Cole is still alive and he knows that she knows where he is, and he's going to get Cole and then he's going to get her before he then leaves. When he gets back in the car, Prue notices that the woman that she saw, Andrea, is with him and that the shadow is still there, so she decides to follow him and her to keep an eye on the shadow. Phoebe then goes to contact Cole to tell him about his landlady going to the mausoleum. At first, he wants to leave to protect her. She says that they're in it together now that they have decided to try them and that he needs to work with them. And they then return to... No, then it cuts to Prue still following Andrea and Davidson. She sees Andrea get out of the car, so she follows her in, but by the time she gets into the room, she sees that Andrea has already been killed by the Seekers, and she then sees the shadow turn into Death, who, when she asks him who he is, introduces himself as the Angel of Death and then helps Andrea's soul to move on, as it was her time. We then have Phoebe looking through the Book of Shadows and managing to find the Seekers, while Cole keeps his distance as the last time he touched the book, it electrocuted him, and inside there is a vanquishing spell for the Seekers. Prue then arrives back having lost Andrea, asks and identifies the Seekers as the ones that she had seen leaving the scene when she walked in. Then Leo and Piper return with a very bright lamp meant to symbolize their eternal love. And other than Leo, no one really likes the lamp. And that becomes a bit of a running theme throughout the episode of them kind of fighting over where to put the lamp because they don't really want it anywhere. And then basically Prue asks Leo about the Angel of Death. Leo confirms that the Angel of Death is a neutral party and it's useless to fight him, as when it's your time, it is your time and he's neither good nor evil. Prue, of course, doesn't listen. She thinks that Death is definitely evil and an evil that she needs to fight. That's why she believes she can see him. And then we have Cole going to the DA's office where Rhys works to try to save him from the Seekers and also keep Phoebe and the sisters safe. He grabs Davidson and shimmers to the mausoleum, and of course the Seekers are able to sense his shimmer and follow him there, where Prue astral projects in to try to help. And they then fight the Seekers. However, partway through, Death arrives and Prue decides to fight him instead of the Seekers, but luckily they do end up retreating before Cole can kill them, or they can kill Cole. And then they return with Davidson back to the manor, where Cole basically, condemn is too strong of a word, but basically admonishes Prue for fighting air instead of the Seekers, and they bring back Davidson. However, when Davidson wakes up, he of course is afraid of all of the magic and everything, and he runs away. And while they aren't going to keep him prisoner, they also do decide to follow him. And they follow him all the way to Andrea's funeral. Meanwhile, Prue goes to the beach and she calls Death through a spell to come before her, and they have a conversation where Death basically taunts her and basically says, like, you're angry at the wrong thing. I'm not the evil you should be fighting. You know, I am inevitable. I am unbeatable. Everybody has a time, and when it's your time, I come to take you. That is just the nature of the world. That is how it works. And he then holds out his hand to her. Meanwhile, at the funeral, Reese is approached by the Seekers. He leads them away from the funeral into, I think it's like a mausoleum, but like bigger, or maybe where they put like the ashes of the cremated. Anyways, it's a building that's in the cemetery that has like doors that you can enter into, and they basically lock the doors so Piper and Phoebe, who are chasing, aren't able to get in, but Death peers inside with Prue. And when Phoebe and Cole went to investigate the landlady's apartment, which they did earlier in the episode, Phoebe had a premonition of Prue turning away as Reese dies, and this is the premonition coming true. Piper and Phoebe watch from outside as the Seekers kill Reese, and Prue arrives with Death and turns her back on the scene. And then, eventually Piper and Phoebe make their way in and kind of complain to Prue about being there and not doing anything to help. And Prue then kneels next to Reese and says that she is sorry. But then they return back to the manor where Cole is being attacked by the Seekers, and upon entering, they fight. Prue takes out some anger on one of them until Cole stops her. Then the sisters say the vanquishing spell, the Seekers are vanquished. And Leo and Piper decide not to fight about the lamp anymore. However, as they then kiss to make up from their little mini fight, the lamp is knocked over and breaks, and so it's no longer an issue. And they are quite happy, and Piper comments that she loves it even more. Then we have Prue coming to terms with Death, and she goes to the beach to kind of contemplate the waves in the ocean, and Death approaches her there, and basically he knows her name, and she asks him how he knows her name, and he tells her that had she not stopped fighting him, had she not learnt the lesson that she was being taught, that Death isn't the evil, isn't the enemy, that she would have been the next on the list after Reese, and that is how he knew her name, because he read it off of his list. And then Prue comments on how she's been angry for so long and she doesn't know how else to be with Death, and Death basically tells her she needs to mourn and then move on before he disappears, and then she looks at the waves and cries to end off the episode. Now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it's now time to rank it. On our ranking list, as always, we'll rank on our two lists, the mostly objective ranking list followed by the personal ranking list. So now we come to our mostly objective rank values, and I've highlighted those I felt applied to this episode. So first we have a single point for our single episode supporting character introduction, and this is the Seekers, which are the type of demon who are adjacent to vampires in that they have vampire fangs, but instead of feeding on blood, they feed on the brain stem cells in order to obtain knowledge from the victim. We then get our multi-episode supporting character introduction, which is the Angel of Death, who appears in several episodes throughout the series. and is sometimes played by different actors, though I will note that the actor who plays the Angel of Death in this episode and in several others is my favorite version of the Angel of Death, but there have been other actors who play the Angel of Death in other episodes as well, so it is more of a category, as there are multiple Angels of Death, not just the one specifically in this episode, and he's worth 2 points. We then have our multi-episode supporting character development, which is that Reese Davidson, who was the inspector, discovers the existence of magic and also loses his life to the Seekers in this episode. So that is also worth 2 points. We then have our multi-season main character growth worth 4 points, which is that Prue comes to accept that death is not the evil that she needs to fight, and then also learns that had she fought to try to save Reese would have died anyways because it was his time, but that she would have been next because she was alone and outnumbered. She would have passed on, and that is why she was able to see death when neither of her sisters could, and that was because it would have been her time, and she was getting basically a glimpse of death before he took her, had she not learned the lesson she was supposed to learn. And it is even noted that Leo missed out on the final fight because the elders told him not to interfere, as Prue needed to learn her lesson the hard way, and that is why he was absent for that fight and only showed up again after. So that is, again, the 4 points, bringing us to 9 points positive. However, I did feel that there was one negative to this episode, and that was the failed emotional impact, which is worth -3 points, leaving us with 6 points total. And basically, Reese's death. Reese was a multi-episode supporting character, and I do think that, he was a likable character. He was very serious about his job. He was doing his duty. But his death wasn't very impactful, at least to me as an audience member. I don't think he had enough screen time or enough development for me to really care about him as an individual person. And while I do think on like a surface shallow level, it is sad that he died in this episode, and it would have been nice had they been able to save him. At the same time, the way the episode positions it, as it was his time, makes the impact of his death lesser because you're almost accepting of it, because that is the whole lesson of the episode, is that death is inevitable. When it's your time, it's your time, and there was nothing that they could do to save him because it was his time. So there wasn't really an emotional impact to Reese's death. However, I feel like there was supposed to be, especially given Prue's reaction to the death, and if not the impact of Reese's death itself, reaction to Prue's reaction may have been expected of the audience. However, I did not get that, and therefore I am considering it failed, as I feel like they were meaning you to be impacted, and I wasn't. So, again, that makes this episode a 6 out of 10. Bringing us to our Season 3 rankings so far on our mostly objective ranking, and in first place we have The Honeymoon's Over, followed by Magic Hour, Sleuthing with the Enemy, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, Just Harried, All Hallowell's Eve, Coyote Piper, Blinded by the White Lighter, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, Power Outage, Bride and Gloom. This episode comes in 13th, Death Takes a Hallowell, followed by Wrestling with Demons, Sight Unseen, and then in 16th, Primrose Empath. Now, as for my personal opinion of the episode, I did really enjoy this episode. I like the theme of the episode, the acceptance of death, the need to grieve and move on from death, to follow through on all the stages of grief, not just stop at anger as Prue had done. I liked that we introduced the Angel of Death because I do like the Angel of Death as a character, and most of the episodes where he does appear tend to be very good episodes. I also liked how there was a real focus in the episode on specifically Prue's character growth and journey in accepting death, and this is especially important given how this season ends. I feel like it's, learning that she was next on the list if she had fought, outnumbered, and alone, knowing that she has come to understand that death isn't the evil, I think is very important because of, how the season ends, like I said. I also found it funny how in the mausoleum she thought she was fighting death, but death is like non-corporeal, so she wasn't doing much. Meanwhile, Cole, who's fighting for his life about the Seekers, looks over at her and she's just kicking and punching at air. I thought that was great. That was amazing. A little bit of comedy to lighten the mood. I also liked the little running theme of, Piper not liking the lamp, and honestly, it was like a really pretty crystal lamp. I don't know why she didn't like it. It is true it probably didn't go with the decor, but I feel like they could have put it in the attic. That would have been like part of the mystical feel of it and it would help to light up, the book so that they could read it easier. And if the light stayed on like all the time, it wouldn't really impact anything because the only time they're in the attic is when they need to read the book or, perform magic of some sort, like a ritual, when they're sitting around like the cauldron, when they're making one of their potion spells or ritual spells. So I think that would have been a good place for it, rather than them needing to fight about it being in the bedroom, in the parlor, in the sitting room, etc., etc. Although in the end it did end up broken, which is unfortunate, but at the same time it ends that little bit of a fight. I didn't think the fight was worth putting in the relationship developments or regressions because it was really minor, more like a bickering thing, not really like what I would consider even a serious fight, and it was resolved so easily with it breaking. And even before it broke, they had resolved that they weren't going to fight about it. So that's why I didn't put points to it there, but I did want to note the saga was a fun, again, little aside from the more serious sort of side of things with Prue. I also liked the beach. I thought that that was like a really nice setting for the themes that they were going through because it could be both happy and melancholy, and they were the only ones on the beach, so it seemed a little lonely while they were talking about death and everything. And I thought, anyways, I think everything about this episode was done well, and the lesson was learned that they were trying to teach. So I gave it a 10 out of 10. I thought that it was very good. I didn't really see personally any real negatives with the episode. I was engaged with it from start to finish. I enjoyed it start to finish. And again, though I've repeated it like 20 times already, I really liked the theme of the episode and the way the lesson was taught. And in hindsight, how, as rewatchers, we know how the season ends. And I feel like that just makes this episode even more impactful than maybe it originally would have been had the season not ended the way that it does. So, that being said, the season 3 rankings so far in the personal ranking, Just Harried is in first place, then Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, All Hallowell's Eve. This episode comes in fifth, Death Takes a Hallowell. Then we have Bride and Gloom, Magic Hour, Blinded by the White Lighter, Honeymoon's Over, Sleuthing with the Enemy, Primrose Empath, Sight Unseen, Power Outage, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, Wrestling with Demons, and then in last place, Coyote Piper. Bringing us now to our final segment, which is the series ranking so far. And on the objective ranking, Season 2 is in first with 75%, Season 1 in second with 73.18%, and then Season 3 so far has 125 out of 220 points. We then have our personal ranking, which has Season 1 in first place with 71.50%, Season 2 in second with 56.82%, and Season 3 so far has 123 out of 220 points. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 3, Episode 16, Death Takes a Hallowell. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.